Hey guys, my name is Alaf Zagatirus. I'm a software developer, and I'll be discussing about design patterns, starting with object-oriented programming. Okay. So what is object and class? Back in the days, in functional programming, we don't have states change, and the procedure jumps from function to functions. But in object-oriented programming, we have states. This is mainly because we have more memory. Instead of kilobytes, we have megabytes and gigabytes of memory. And object is all about wrapping state and or data with its own behaviors, or meaning like behaviors are methods or functions that makes change on the data. Okay, so class is just a blueprint for how we can create the object. And let's have an example called Chuck Norris. So this Chuck Norris can have like a weight, height, teardrop, or hair. And as for a behavior, it can take selfie with Bigfoot. His tears can cure cancer. It can beat sun at certain context, or any kind of methods or functions we can apply on the data. Okay, and next is class hierarchy. Let's say Chuck Norris has children, and we expect to have children, and when we need something that the parent don't have, or something that we need to be to have overridden with. So this child class is both like Chuck daughter and Chuck son can have extra fields or data, which is like Instagram name, a Twitch ID, and also for behavior, they can have like walk on Mars, can do time travel. So anything that is extra of what the parent has, or at least make or override what the parent had before. Next is relationship between objects. So in the previous slide, we try to understand how class creates object, and this object can have data and behavior that we can apply on. And here we have like different objects and how we can have the interaction between each other. So the first one is association. An object can use another object. And let's say we have a customer object and we want to place an order, and this customer can apply for an order. And as for dependency, it has a weaker association. One is a student in a book, and we can have a student object can survive without a book. Mostly seen in these days, everything is online, so book is not necessary anymore. And the next one is composition. It means like we have like parts, a whole and part example, like you and your heart. Your heart cannot survive without you, and you cannot survive without your heart. But not in a modern age, right? A heart can survive in a fridge, at least for a few days or even more. And next one is aggregation, in which the part can survive without the whole. Like you can have a hat and you also, and then the hat can survive without you, and you can survive without a hat, except for bald guys. I mean, they cannot survive it. Okay, next part is the 4 pillars of object-oriented programming. Some consider them as the 4 horsemen of object-oriented programming. And the first one is abstraction. So it gives us a very clear understanding on what we are about to create. So it gives clear and defined context to create a class. So here we have a stick figure questioning its own existence. And for example, a person can be a patient in a hospital. This same person can be a citizen for the government, or could be a customer for a business, or an inmate in a state prison, right? So it can the same person can have different fields and data, and fields or data, and also behavior that act upon it. And the second one is encapsulation. So here we are trying to hide as much as possible. Our human body is a prime example. When we eat, we don't really consider what's happening in our body, like how our stomach works, how our intestine works, and everything. Everything's hidden from outside world. all we need is just to put on, of course, the right kind of food, and all is taken care of. So we can also think about this kind of procedures when we create, when we develop a program, where we can hide the inner workings of the our classes, hidden from the outside world. And the next one is inheritance. And we have here Chuck Norris as an example, right? Or we can bring up Queen of England, the inheritance that she has from her parents. And does she have parents, or was she this old all the time? Oh, never mind. So polymorphism is also a way to handle an object in a different way. We have one example, like the Bernoulli family. They were very famous for their discoveries in mathematics. And there's one instance when this guy went to their home and asked for Mr. Bernoulli, and the maid asked, like, which one? So we can use a single last name to have a reference to different objects. So this is how we have a polymorphic feature in your program. You can have as a guy can act as a Marvel guy, can have be like a developer or a gym guy, and this can also being also having a state of being a same object, but you can have a different interface to act on, and this is how you this is how we can explain polymorphism. So those are the four basic pillars of object-oriented programming. The first one is having a very defined context to work on, encapsulate whatever you can do to hide the inner workings of your program, and try to have inheritance if possible, but mostly you can use composition. We will move to that part on our next slide. And having a polymorphic feature. You can say like an object, but this object can be specifically be like a cat or a dog object, but you can think of it just as a simple object, and it can have like a polymorphic feature. So the last slide is the software design principles, and here we have start with a very basic this guy who was a caveman, and let's say he's trying to create a wheel for his for first time, and here it's very simple, and all he can do is just sit down for a week and try to come up with the idea and then build this wheel. But if things are getting sophisticated, as in the second image, he can delegate it to a specific day, meaning that he can, instead of just doing it anytime, he can have a specific day to work on, or a specific place, or having a workshop. So we are trying to evolve how the task is being worked on in a very complicated way. So to start with, we can either start with creating a new method, and if this new method is not enough, we can create a whole class and then have its own data, its own behaviors, and then we can have a reference to this specific class, which will be an object. And this is how we encapsulate and evolve with change in our program. We start with creating a separate method. If this separate method is not enough, we can create a whole class. And even if this class is not enough, we can create a whole package. And the second one is, instead of having a direct work on a specific class, try to work on interface rather than an implementation. So this is a very flexible way to program, and I have few examples here. Let's say we are living in ancient times, and then there were this kingdom where there's this royal decree asking the male citizens, and back then women were not allowed to go to war, but there were this royal decree asking men to go to war. and there were specific criteria, like have 4 limbs, can have a better sight, can survive in a dark, and can kill a dragon. So those are the criteria that every young man should fulfill. So the king or the queen would not care what kind of object they have, or what kind of soldiers they have, as long as they follow those specific decree. So they only need to follow those rules, and then the king or the royal will only need to just need to expect those kind of functions to be done by the soldier, like come with the head of the dragon, or come with the princess who was imprisoned by the dragon, right? So it doesn't matter if you're an ogre, it doesn't matter if you are a human, it doesn't matter if you are a Disney character. As long as you manage to fulfill those tasks, you are the royal family is very flexible with how it gets the work done. And this is a very simple way to explain it. And the next one is composition over inheritance. So in this case, let's say let's have a question of whether we want inheritance or composition. If we consider inheritance, we are very restricted to the fields and methods, which are the behaviors. But if it is composition, it's like instead of being a royal family by yourself, you have very loyal friend who is a prince or a princess. So you can just ask them to do something, or you can ask them for money, you can ask them for investment, and they can do it. And you have a flexible lifestyle, and you don't have those royal rules that you have to follow, the way you eat, the way you dress. So you have much flexibility, and also you have the financial means by asking a favor for those royal figures that you have a friend with. So those are composition we have, which are of course very flexible, rather than being a king or a queen or a prince. And yeah, those are the first steps in mastering design patterns. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you, and let me know if you have any questions and comments, and goodbye.